Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, based loosely on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what this podcast is all about. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today it's an honor and a privilege to welcome Pastor Ezra Okoti. Ezra, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm very excited for this conversation today, as you can imagine. But Ezra is a father of four. He is also the executive pastor of multiplication at Northview Community Church here in Abbotsford.
Yes.
Ezra was also the very first pastor I heard speak here when I came to Abbotsford a couple of years ago, as some of you will know. Ezra, however, didn't know that I didn't really attend church in Ontario, so it was a pretty special thing. Ezra's been a pastor for about 20 years in Canada, and he was pastoring prior to that for a number of years in Kenya, Africa. And so it was interesting, as I said, he was the first pastor I saw speak here, very intrigued by you bringing not only scripture together, but current relevancy. I thought that was it. But what's also interesting about the timing of this podcast is that Ezra's the most recent pastor I've heard speak on Saturday.
That's right.
And he talked about, well, before I go there, also recognize this is the 70th episode of Better Than Not. And it's the first in-person episode we've done. So I'm quite excited about that, Ezra. So Saturday, that's the night we go to church here, Ezra spoke about Acts 4, verses 23 to 31, in which he'll probably expand on that as well. But what's really interesting and applicable here was the fact that, and I think you said John and James were in prison as part of it, and they weren't praying for safety and protection. They were praying for God to give them boldness. And I thought, so interesting, because a lot of this podcast, when we talk about shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas, is really, in many ways, boldness, coming on and stepping in boldness. So the timing of this was kind of meant to be in many ways.
Totally.
So with that, Ezra, I thought I'd start just wondering, how did this come into your life? I don't like to call it a job. Maybe a calling. People call it a vocation. But you live and breathe this. It's part of your being. How did that start for you?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for those who are watching online. It's a privilege that I get to interact with Doug and talk to you guys about some of these issues. So, how did this come about for me? Well, I grew up in Kenya. Second year of high school, I come to Saving Faith.
You're like 14? 15?
So 14, 15, around there.
Okay.
So I come to Saving Faith in high school, and how that came about was a friend of mine invited me to go to this Christian camp. And he said, at camp, there's sports, there's girls, there's food. You'll have a good time. And I said, great. I mean, these are three things that I enjoy and I like to be a part of with young people, sports, food, girls will be there. Awesome. So I go to this Christian camp. Now, I grew up in a Christian home. And when I say Christian home, it's kind of like, we prayed the odd time. We'd go to church once in a while, but not really committed. Anyway, so I go to this Christian camp. And that was the first time, I will say, I actually heard the gospel of Jesus Christ articulated well. And I knew the Christmas story. I knew the Easter story, but I never really connected as to how does that apply to me? I just felt like Jesus was a good guy and he was crucified. How dare they? The resurrection of Christ didn't mean much to me. prior to my conversion, I always wanted to be in the aviation industry. I wanted to be a pilot. My father works for the National Airline. He was in the accounting division, so he would take us to the airport. That was before 9/11. It was before all these security measures. So you could literally come, walk right into an aeroplane and things like that. So I love aeroplanes. I love aviation. I spoke to some of the pilots of our national airline, Kenya Airways at the time.
Wow.
So that was the world that I was really feeling that I want to be a pilot.
So were you in, like, had you experienced like the air kind of thing?
Yes.
Flying?
Yes.
And
so
closer to the heavens.
Yeah, this is kind of like, this is great. I'd love to do this as a profession, as a career. Then I became a Christian, made him second year of high school when I became a Christian. And then that desire just faded.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what, I can't explain it. The thrill, the drive, the draw to aviation just faded. But then and then anyone who asked me, Ezra, what are you striving to be? I don't know. I don't know what I want to be. But one thing that I really loved doing was spending a lot of time in church. I loved, like, every waking moment, all weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we'd be gathered in church, we'd do plays and youth group and things like that, youth activities. So when weekends came, I sometimes didn't do my homework because I was busy hanging out with my buddies in church, who would be doing practicing musicals and doing all these plays and doing outreach. And then Sunday we come for service, and then in the afternoon we'd have a youth gathering. And so Saturday I'd be gone from 9 to 5 or 6 p.m. and then on Sunday repeat. And that was just my rhythms. And then during the school vacation would have youth camps and all these youth activities. I loved.
This is like a big switch
That was
in your life, right?
Yes, that was a huge switch. But again, I didn't clue in that maybe ministry would be what God is calling me into.
Okay.
I just loved the church. I loved theology. I loved God's people. But if you asked me at the time, Ezra, do you want to be a pastor? Never. Why? I'm not patient enough. I don't like people. Like, walking with people through their challenges and their muck and their ups and downs. It was me. Anyway.
But the aviation, the flying pilot, that has just fallen into the background.
I would even say it was as though it was never there. Wow. Like the desire, the draw, the passion. I mean, today I love airplanes. If I'm flying somewhere and I'm waiting in the boarding lounge, waiting for I'll just go in and just stare at airplanes and think, these are the most beautiful things. Beautiful, they're just amazing. I'd see them take off and land, and I'd see the pilots come and all these people who are taking care of it, like making sure that the luggage is in it. I just find that very fascinating. But being a pilot, meh.
Really?
It just vanished. I can't explain, but that's just the passion left. But then there was a deeper passion. I guess it was replaced with a deeper drive to know, I want to know God. So I graduate from high school, still have no idea what I want to do.
And you're not seeing this at all like a calling?
No, that's not me, not a calling.
This is just part of my life.
This is just Ezra.
Wow.
So I graduate from high school, then I decided to go to this Bible college in our country. So we would have theology in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we would do work details. So you'd have some of us who work in the kitchen, others will be cleaning the dorms, others will be raking leaves and doing the gardening work and things like that. So anyway, so in the afternoon, one afternoon, so Bible college, I loved it. We had good teachers. They were so theologically deep and sharp. So this is, I really enjoyed my classroom work, the academic work. Oh my, we're studying the Bible, new things I didn't know. But so in the afternoon, my work assignment that afternoon was gardening. So I was raking leaves and making sure that the flower beds were good and everything. So I'm all alone.
This is around the school?
Yeah, just around the school.
Okay.
So I'm all alone on the fields, raking these leaves and fantasizing. Back in the day, there was no podcast, there was no AirPods or anything like that. So it's just you and your thoughts. So
which isn't a bad thing.
Which isn't a bad thing,
Kind of miss that someday.
Exactly. So there I was, me and my thoughts, raking these leaves in the field and dreaming. just daydreaming
Yeah,
in my mind.
yeah.
And I was daydreaming that, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if I was one of these professors? You know, I have these students and I'm teaching them theology and I'm opening their eyes on this and I'm showing them principles they never thought about. Because that was my experience as a student. Like, I'm just eating everything these people were teaching, right? So this is my dream. Oh, it would be so great if I'll teach this, I'll teach that. Man, it would be so good and I'll be serving the Lord this way. Was my thought. So as I'm raking, I hear someone calling me, "Hey, Ezra." So I stop raking and I look around, and there's nobody around. So I keep raking. So I'm just thinking, whatever. So I keep raking, and then I go back into my little fantasy, right? And then the voice calls me again, "Ezra," as clear as you're hearing my voice right now.
Like
Ezra,
we're talking.
Like we're talking now. I'm raking and I'm daydreaming, and then the person calling me snaps me out of my dream, of my daydreaming.
Wow.
So I look around and there's nobody. So I'm thinking, it's my buddies now playing games. Maybe they're hiding behind bushes. Right. So I start looking to see who's here. And I'm like, there's nobody here, but I know someone called me. Then it dawned on to me, there's this story of Eli and Samuel. Mm-hmm. Samuel is a boy, Eli is a prophet, and it's at night, and so Samuel is trying to sleep, and then he hears a voice calling him, and so he rushes to Eli saying, yes, and then the prophet says, no, I didn't call you. So this happens a couple times, and then Eli tells Samuel, buddy, it might be the Lord calling you, so you might want to say, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Yes,
So so that story comes to mind right away, and then I stand there with my rake, and then I feel weird. Like, you just feel like, this is crazy. Like, surely this is not God calling me.
Yes, yeah.
So, but then I say, okay, I'll just follow through with it. So I say, yes, Lord. But it sounded weird.
Yeah, I was just
for me, because I'm all alone. Like, I'm all alone. This is weird. Like, surely God is not speaking. Like, come on. Is he speaking to me? Never. So I just say, okay, yes, Lord. And the moment I said that same voice, now I am alert, I am awake, holding my rake on this field. The Lord says, or this voice says, Ezra, I want you to do this. That's all. I want you to do this. And I knew what this was.
Wow.
This was, I want you to teach my word. I knew it in my heart. And then the voice never, and I was shaking and I was pondering, was I just dreaming? Wow. What was that all about? But the voice was as clear as you're hearing my voice right now. It wasn't a dialogue. It was just Ezra twice. And then I respond feeling weird and crazy. Like, am I going crazy? And then the voice spoke and just, I want you to do this.
And that was it.
And that was it. And that was it.
So have you heard that voice again in your life?
Nope.
Never.
It was that one time, and I remember that voice as though it happened yesterday.
Well, I can, like, the way you're telling the story.
Right.
Telling the story is like very real.
Yesterday. So that's what happened, and I knew, okay, this is what I need to do.
So what did you do then?
You're
spellbound almost.
So yeah, of course. But then I guess from that point, then is when I knew what my calling was. So
okay. And you didn't feel like you could debate this.
There was no question in my mind what just took place.
Wow.
I couldn't defend it to somebody else. It was my personal experience that I knew that I knew that I knew. And you are now not going to get me out of that track. I knew. Now, I knew I needed to further my education. I knew I needed to figure out, okay, Lord, where, in what context. So in my mind, the context that I thought, again, I wasn't thinking I'll be a pastor. So I thought I'll be in academia.
Yes.
I thought, Professor Ezra, or teaching in a Bible college, or something like that. Discipleship, parachurch ministry, but never in a church. Wow. Never in a church.
So this is like the fall of your first year at Bible college. Right.
So in Africa, so our school year starts January to December. So it's basically calendar year.
Like the way it should be.
Yeah, it's calendar year. It's not like here.
Yeah. Okay.
So you graduate in November. You're done, and then you start school in January the next year, and then you carry on. Now, big universities, though, in Africa, they will follow the academic year similar to North America, September to April.
All
that
right.
is the bigger universities. But most colleges, most schools, it'll be January to December.
So did you tell anybody that this has happened? Like friends or parents?
At first, no. But when people started asking me, so Ezra, what are your plan? Yeah, I think ministry. I think ministry.
And what was like? Were they like, oh yeah, that's exactly what Ezra should do, or like they shocked like?
No, I mean, people are like, oh, that's cool, but then conversation goes on. but people who hey, what do you want to do, Doug? Oh, I want to be a pilot, or I want to be in accounting, or I want to be a lawyer, whatever. Oh, okay, that's cool, that's great. But for me, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's great. And then the conversation moves on. So it wasn't.
It's probably often like a conversation stopper.
Yeah, pretty much. But in Africa more so, like, if you're not in the wealth and prosperity gospel circles, pastoral ministry has no life in it. Like, how are you going to feed your family? Right. How are you going to get married? How are you going to take your kids to school? How are you gonna? So there is no quote unquote future. In pastoral ministry in terms of economically, really. So I go and tell my dad, hey, you know what? This is what I want to do.
Well, I'm excited.
My goodness, brother. Oh, my dad was so angry. He was so mad.
I can relate to this in a way, because when our daughter, she had a calling quite early. She still works. She works in missions now, but in Canada. And she came to me, and like, I'm sometimes embarrassed to even admit this.
Yeah.
But we'd always been chase your dreams with our kids. And then she came and told me that, and it was like anything but that. And I don't know why I felt that way in that kind of extreme. But when you say your father felt that way, like, there's a comfort to me going like, okay, I wasn't that.
No.
What's happened, though, to how the family has connected with this, like, again, like I come to Abbotsford, I see you, and I wasn't seeing you even live. I was seeing you via the satellite we do with him. We actually go to Central Abbotsford in which is a satellite campus to the Northview main campus. And so I was like amazed that would even come through in a screen. Like, it was just kind of crazy. So what's really interesting here is our unexpected conversation prior to Christmas. I was at the Connect desk, which Laura often will go, I can't believe you're here. And you came up, and like, for some reason or other, we just started to chat. And you were saying a very similar thing with regard to today's world for different reasons. So now I've kind of interrupted you, but now you've confronted your father. He hasn't been super receptive. What happened?
Oh, so I talked to my dad, and I tell him this is what I think I want to be, because my dad is asking, so Ezra, graduate high school, you're doing this Bible thing, that's great, but okay, now, what career? Buddy, what career? I mean, I've spent all this money in Africa, going to school, parents pay tuition fees.
Okay.
So, and they're really high, and so the parents are denying themselves to take you to school. So my dad is feeling like, I have invested so much money in you. Yeah, I'm happy you're doing this Bible thing. That's great, but now let's talk seriously. So
that's tough.
And added to that, in Africa, most parents, your retirement plan is your child's success professionally. Because children now begin to support mom and dad financially. So you pay for their medical, you buy their food, you pay for a parent's livelihood is the child. So for my father, this is an economic benefit if his son becomes a pilot.
Absolutely, for sure. And he was a pilot.
So this is awesome. If my boy is this career, he'll be making good money, which means better life for us. But now if you're thinking about going into ministry, what in the world? And so for him, he's staring now at a very uncomfortable, needy retirement. So now what do you do?
It's probably even affects like in a way like. What do I tell my friends? Like how do there's a pride, like there's a whole thing that kind of fits into that, right? It's a very complicated.
It is a complicated
thing to deal with.
It is.
Right?
It is. So anyway, so Dad was not thrilled in any way, shape, or form, and he looked at me in the eye and he said, "Ezra, you will never amount to anything. You will never afford a shirt that I bought for you. You will never. He was so upset.
Oh, man.
But then my mom kept chiming in to say, but at least he's going to church. At least he's not in pubs. At least he's not doing drugs and getting into trouble. At least he's going to church. But my dad wouldn't have any of it.
He was hurt.
He was hurt. But looking back, now I have a son who is in college and he's doing engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And my son, academically, he has other challenges, as every other person does, but academics is not one of them.
No.
He is a student with calculus and all the engineering craziness, the chemistry and all that. Yesterday, he showed me his grades for this past semester, and he aced everything.
Unbelievable.
And so I keep telling him, buddy, like, God bless you. And he's like, what? It's not a big deal. It's not that hard anyway. That's how he is.
Yes.
But on the flip side, he also loves Jesus and loves the gospel. And I can see you could be in ministry, son. You could be a missionary. You could be a pastor. But then I'm thinking as a father, now that humanism, thinking, dude, you could be an engineer, and I'm looking at maybe 300,000, 400,000 a year, easy. And then you might even help me and your mom to pay off our mortgage and all this. This is what I'm thinking.
Roles have switched.
Oh, yeah, the roles have switched. So, I want to be an engineer, but I can also see a love for the gospel in this young man. And he wakes up on his own. He goes to church on his own. This morning, he woke up at 5 a.m.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I wake up, I go downstairs to make my coffee, and I see the living room light on. I'm like, what's going on in the living room? Like, did they leave the lights on? No. Who did I find? My son, with his headphones on, doing what? Reading his Bible.
That's crazy.
And I asked him, dude, what time did you wake up? I woke up at 5. And you've been reading? Yeah. For the last hour and a half. I'm like, wow, this morning, this is what I saw. So I can see, is there ministry in him? Yes. But as a father, I also, man, engineering will be nice because of all the benefits that I'll get. See, so I can see my father's struggle there.
And I see now from our conversation that we had that day in the front lobby why this really fits into your world, because we started introducing you as the executive pastor of multiplication.
Yeah.
So what is how would you explain multiplication to someone who's asking?
That's a great question. So my role at Northview, basically, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
So Northview Community Church has been around 40 years. Things have been going well. Church has grown. Lots of people coming. Our budgets are good. Our ministry is going well. No drama. You come to Northview, we'll sing, you'll hear a good message, there'll be fellowship around food if it's Saturday night, and Sunday morning there's coffee, there's conversation. Come and do the same thing. And then during the week, Bible studies, small
It's
groups.
unbelievable, actually.
It's really going well.
Yes.
But then I will say in between 2013 to 2016, our elders began thinking, yeah, it's great to be doing this, but is this all we are? And what will God call us into?
Yes.
How will God hold us accountable to all the blessings He's given us as a church? Because we could just keep doing Northview thing and getting a better screen and getting a better building and better seats and all those things and making our place look really nice and swanky. Or we could motivate our people to give to a greater cause, the cause that we ought to be on, making disciples of all nations, Matthew 20:19-20. So the elders then discerned together, prayed together, and decided, you know what, we need to be a church embracing multiplication. What is that? Multiplication is the planting of churches across our country, because we recognize Canada is not a Christian country. Wikipedia will tell you Canada is a Christian country because you have 52% of people who profess to be evangelical Christians. But the reality here is how many of those 52% actually are evangelical Christians who are disciples of Jesus, making disciples? They're not there.
No.
So we recognize, my goodness, we have been called by God to make disciples of all nations. How do we make disciples? We make disciples in the context of a local church where you're raising people, training them to understand the gospel, articulate the gospel, live out its implications in the marketplace, on their day-to-day. So then we said, you know what, we will be about multiplication. So we would say our big multiplication will be a catch-all for so many things. There's church revitalization. So we come alongside churches that are struggling to say, hey, we can help if you would like. So we can help you with resources, we can help you financially, we can help you in whichever way you need help to revitalize you. So that's what leadership development is another. Because we are seeing there's a leadership pipeline crisis in Canada. Not many young people are coming into the ministry.
Yes.
And when you and I met, we were talking,
that was the conversation.
That was a conversation to say, back I would say in 2012, 2013, 2014, and moving forward, there was a stat that was quite staggering to say you have about 1,500 pastors who are leaving the ministry every month, not every year, every month. So 10 months in, 15,000 are gone. So every year, so 18,000 are leaving the ministry. So you're talking pastors in different stages of ministry, the lead pastor, associate pastor, whatever, youth pastor leaving the ministry. So, okay, fine, different people leave ministry for different reasons. But then the question is, do we have a pipeline that is bringing in 1,500 a month to cover those who are leaving, let alone to plant new churches in new communities?
Yeah.
That number is not there. So church leadership development now becomes a big thing. So we began our intern program and our immersion.
Which is kind of an amazing program when you think. I mean, I look at Central Abbotsford. Now, what's really interesting to me with Northview is if you enjoy the big church experience, you can go to Downs Road.
Downs Road, yes.
And it's a big sanctuary. It's like it's very like you said, like the worship there, the musicians, there's everything. But what's really interesting is how you've taken that and with the satellite side, the like Central Abbotsford or East Abbotsford for that matter, they get the sermon, the message from Downs. So you get consistency with regards to the message being delivered. And that was what attracted me, like kind of originally when that happened. But what I thought was, what my point here is that if you like a smaller community church, and I find there's a real community part that goes with that, this is what Central Abbotsford is. And it's just like, and when I came there, a young pastor, Joshua, who's been on this podcast, that we learned that you were one of his very important mentors. So if you want to go back to one of the previous episodes, Joshua speaks very highly of Ezra, having never met him and what he got from the first meeting. Anyway, so we come back, you kind of even brought this as into the mission statement of Northview, of you're better at this, placing a church within a driving distance of every Canadian.
We want to see a gospel. We want to see a gospel proclaiming church within reach of every Canadian. That's our heart. Now we recognize that we can't do it on our own. We are not hubris enough to think, it's Northview and we can do it on our own. And it's not about Northview's brand being labeled all across Canada, all across BC. No. So we want to partner, and maybe there are people who are listening here. We want to partner. We desire to partner with like-minded churches to say, hey, let's look at the Canadian landscape and say, is Christ being worshipped? Can we say, in the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come? Has the kingdom of God come in the lives of people, in their marriages, in their homes, in the schools, in the community centers, with the poor and the needy in our community? Can we say the kingdom of God has come? And the answer to that question across Canada is no.
Clearly, yes.
Okay, so then the question becomes, we want to do something. We want to bring the gospel. So as the gospel transforms the lives of people, now the kingdom of God is coming, meaning his word is being obeyed. And we strongly believe at Northview that the gospel of Jesus Christ will bring about the flourishing of an individual and the society as a whole. So think of it as a tide that comes into a marina. The little poor man's dinghy and the rich man's yacht will all float a little higher because the tide comes in. So the gospel is that tide that will benefit all the boats and each individual boat equally. Unlike any other worldview that will be out there, be it atheism, be it all other religions, we believe, at least personally, I believe the gospel is unique in that it's not just the individual, but it's the community at large. And the community is not just people who are evangelical like me, but even people who might consider themselves my enemies.
Yes.
The gospel will press me, Ezra, to love them.
Yes.
To pray that God would do good for them. Yeah. And I would do as much as I can as they oppose me, call me names. I love them, I care for them, I provide for them, I share what I have with them. Powerful. That's what the gospel calls me to do.
Well, you know, when you say this, Ezra, it's very interesting to me, and what I've kind of found profound. There's 2 points here that I want to make. One of them is the fact that I kind of grew up in the whole idea that, like, I had to earn my way into heaven. And I've heard you and I've heard Mark, Pastor Marcus, lead pastor at Northview, kind of said, like, this is one of the few religions that you don't earn your way in.
No.
And in the New Testament, Paul very clearly says this in Galatians. It was profound for me. Like, it was a huge moment. This is the Bible study that Ezra's talked about, where he talks about you're justified through faith in God, through Christ, and not through works of the law.
Yes.
And I was just like, that was profound to me, because like, I kind of feel like, in our world, we have to earn everything.
Yes.
Like, we'll get back to that with your son and trying to figure that out. It's like, you do this, you get that. You do this, you get that. And yet here we have this I'll call it faith, that you just have to, not just, but you have to faith in Christ. And no matter what you do, I mean, Paul says you're cursed by the law.
Yes.
Because no one can do everything perfectly. One man could do it perfectly.
Yes.
And so this became very, very profound to me in trying to figure out, like, how that kind of started to go. So that, to your point, like, are we learning this wrong? Like, how does that, like, and a lot of the stuff, part of the podcast here, part of what I write about, falls into this category now, because I often think we're still kind of in the Old Testament. Right. Like, we're still trying to get our way there versus what are we really representing, and the whole spiritual part that goes with the New Testament. But coming back to this, what I thought was really interesting when you had said this, and you had recently been to a conference. I'm switching back to when you were talking about the church planting.
Yeah.
And I was kind of stunned by what you told me for 2 reasons. One of them was I had just read this, or not read this book, but I'm kind of in this book by another podcaster used to do Unbelievable, Justin Brierley, who wrote The Rebirth of Belief or Faith in God. And I was kind of going, like, I hear every, like, week, like, we're losing people from the Christian faith. But then I kind of put my hand up and go, but what about me? Like, I've done the reverse, so to speak. And then I see this book. Then coincidentally, Mark at the AGM talked about the book, which I was shocked by. And that's why I want to talk about this conference, because one of the things that I think, and I'm phrasing it, but we're all kind of, the denominations of Christianity are there. And it was like, okay, we're all in kind of different roles, whether United, Anglican, I grew up in an Anglican church, evangelical. We all got the same problem that you're talking about, is that we have so many leaving, like leaders, pastors, ministers, leaving the faith.
Yes.
What are we going to do about it? Right. And you've attended this conference.
Yes.
And this is why I said, like, and this comes back to your son, because you talked about, now you're in this kind of an opposite dilemma to your father, but it's still one of those. So explain how you're processing this, or even the conference.
Yeah. So in this conference, the conference that you were referring to was a leadership pipeline crisis symposium. So
What a title.
Yeah, what a title. So the idea, the premise there was to bring seminary professors from big seminaries in Canada, Bible school presidents coming, lead pastors and senior leaders from prominent churches across the country, and also agency leaders across the country. So coming together, we gathered in Muskoka, Northern Ontario, to have this conversation to say, okay, we recognize churches are closing. Many churches are closing down. Many churches don't have leaders. They don't have leaders. So you have a congregation, they've put up a job posting, we're looking for a lead pastor, but they've been without a lead pastor for 2 months, for 2 years, 3 years, some of them. And now they're dwindling. And then the seminaries as well, they're not seeing, or Bible colleges, they're not seeing a stream of young men, young women coming in, wanting to be trained to be in the ministry, in local church ministry. Those who are being trained, many of them might be counselors, might be parachurch individuals, doing ministry that way, but not local church. And so the question then is, oh dear, we strongly believe that the local church is the vehicle that Christ will use to keep people in the faith. So if you don't have ministers, pastors, who are leading these churches, who are discipling people, who are helping people follow Jesus, what's the state of the Christian church in Canada 20 years from now if we don't have that? So that was the conversation there. And we really wrestled with, what are the obstacles? What are the things that are, what are the obstacles, is a good word. What obstacles are there that are causing many young people to not even consider ministry
as a vocation, or
as a vocation,
schooling, whatever?
Yeah. So and one of the things that some of the takeaways for me personally was, back in the day you had the Sunday night service.
Right.
So people would go Sunday morning, and then you'll have friends over for soup, and then you all go to church again Sunday night for the Sunday night service. And the Sunday night service, in many churches across North America, you had that was when the missionary comes and tells stories about the mission field. That's when you have the itinerant evangelist who would come and share Jesus. That's when the church planter will come and give a report about his church plant, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So there was a lot of these remarkable stories of how God is transforming the lives of people in different communities that were being shared on a Sunday. So now you have all these young people listening to this story week in, week out, weekend after weekend, listening to these stories. All of a sudden, they'll be like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to see God move in remarkable ways. It's the same idea when you see young men and young women listening to stories of their peers going to YWAM, they're going to Cape Henry, or they're touring Europe, and they come and they share these stories. All of a sudden, they inspire their friends who want to go to YWAM, tour Europe, or Cape Henry, or whatever the case may be.
They sound fun.
Exactly. But we don't have the church planter, we don't have the missionary, we don't have the evangelist who's sharing on a consistent basis, inspiring young men, young women, to show them Jesus is worth giving up all these things for. So when you go back again, let's just rewind a little bit. In my maternal grandpa, so my mom's father.
Yes.
My mom's father grew up, we're talking tail end of the 1800s. And in his village, he saw the first white man come to a village. My grandfather did. He was about 6, 7 years old at the time. And so this missionary came to our village, and missionaries back then, they would come to a village and they'll establish 3 things. They'll have a clinic, they'll have a school, and then they'll have a church. So mission centers that were established, and some are still there today. You will find there's a clinic, there's a school, there's a church. So my grandfather would go to this mission center because enamored by this white dude. I've never seen a white person ever in my life. And then what is he saying? And this white man is trying to learn the language. So he learned the language, shared the gospel. Grandpa becomes a Christian, discipled, and then he ended up being the pastor of this church. And so my grandfather then shares the gospel with my mom, and then my mom is reading Bible stories to us, but still the gospel is not clicking, but I was warm to it. Then I go to the Christian camp and I meet Jesus. Now my question is, The missionary who bushwhacked his way all the way to our village. What did this man give up? Gave up so much to endure the harsh realities of African tropical diseases, losing things.
It's hard to imagine.
It is
in today's world. It's almost unimaginable. Actually.
Gave up so much so that the gospel would move forward and transform an entire nation.
Man.
But this missionary understood the gospel to say Jesus is worth making that commitment. Giving up all of that, Jesus is worth it. So at the symposium, the question then is, are we telling stories and inspiring our young men and women to say Jesus is worth this? So we were wrestling with those spaces. So coming now back, and the takeaway for me as a pastor is to say, man, I need to spend time with young men, young women. I need to inspire these people. I need to tell stories about God's grace. I need to expose these young people to show them that Jesus Christ is worth. And the life that we have here, it's nice to have a nice house. It's nice to have a nice car and to go to different exotic places for holidays. That's true. But what do the scriptures say about the afterlife, the eternity that is awaiting us, and how Christ will come back and make all things new? And what is interesting, people think, oh, heaven is now somewhere up there. Actually, no. Christ will renew the earth. And so I've never been to Hawaii personally, ever.
No.
And who knows? I may never go to Hawaii, but one thing I know is there'll be a Hawaii in heaven because heaven will be here, but with no weeds, no chaos, no cancer, no pain, so forever. So I will go to Hawaii. I'll go to Fiji. I'll go to South Africa. I'll go to South America. I will enjoy the earth in its original state, how God intended it to be forever. So my joy right now, or my assignment right now, is to inspire these young men and women so that we can go and tell other Canadians,
Well, you know, when you say that, my daughter will say today, so she does missions work with a company called Inner Hope, actually in Vancouver. They're the house parents, actually, for this. And they always thought they were going to have to go to Africa to be missionaries. That's kind of what was in her mind. Mom and Dad weren't so excited about her going, and especially when you talk about the missionaries seeing your grandfather. But she said that she still thinks summer camp for kids is the best way for them to understand and learn God. She says that to me, she says, there's nothing else. That's where she, at 12 years old, kind of a similar story to yourself, that was where it changed her life.
Yeah.
And being the corporate dad in work, big meetings, flying, all those things, I was not so much aware of that was even going on. I just know I had this great daughter, and it's and it's kind of like, whoa, this is quite and so coming out here, being exposed as I have, it's like, to be fair, I mean, I had already started, I'd seen the Bible series that Mark Burnett and Roma Downey did that was on the History Channel, the Abraham story, dramatized, kind of pounded me in the head. I'd never heard it that. I know that story, but being Abraham, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but him being told by God, you're going to have descendants as numerous as the stars.
Right.
And then Sarah's barren.
Right.
And what does he do? He does the most human thing you could do.
Of course.
Or she does. She says, go to my servant girl.
Yeah. Take care of the problem.
As context has it, that was part of an appropriate way to have an heir at that time.
Absolutely.
But I'm watching this and I'm going, dramatized, right? Not reading this time. It's drama. I'm going, well, this is messed up. You know this isn't going to end well. You just know. You go and do this. And that was one of a major impact for me that said, okay, I got to start reading this. And then I saw, and this is where the Justin Brierley book seems to fascinate me, is so many people are now beginning to speak out more and more about whether they're necessarily even, I'll say, completely Christian, their stories that they're learning, the theology, I'll call it from an intellectual standpoint versus a faith standpoint, to me is just mind-blowing. how is this infinity that's in the Bible not more prominent in our world? And it almost feels like the world we live in is it went in the Bible and chose to do everything that's opposite to what's there.
Yeah. Like, yes. I think it all boils down to human rebellion. It's what it is.
Yeah. From the fall.
Yeah. It just is. We want our way. Mm-hmm. We want to be gods unto ourselves. And this goes all the way back. You see what Cain does to his brother, and then the story unpacks. You see Moses and the people of Egypt have come all the way from Egypt into the wilderness, into the promised land. You think, okay, God has just delivered us. And then after the book of Joshua, this conquest has happened. It's amazing. God has now come through on his promises. You come to the book of Judges, where there was no fear of God. There was no king. And in Judges, the recurring theme you'll hear, the recurring verse you will read in Judges will be, in those days there was no king, therefore everybody did as he saw fit. Now, when we see in those days there's no king, we think political leader. Actually, what the author of Judges is saying, this is an indictment to people. God was the one to be your king. God was the one to be your leader. And you've rejected this God. Yes. So there's no king because you've rejected. Everyone did as he saw fit. So what does he say? What does he mean? Everybody did as he saw fit. Meaning, I'm now a king myself. It's all about me. So this goes all the way. So all that to say, the reason we are not seeing some of these things is because we are rebellious people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are rebellious people. We like the wrong things too much and the right things too little. We don't believe when God says this, I don't believe. And again, test this. Next time you go to a place where they're doing a renovation and you see a sign, wet paint.
Yes.
Do not touch. What's the first thing you will do? You will put your nice little pointy finger and you will touch. But the sign said, in block letters, don't touch. Well, I wonder, is it dry?
Don't tell me what not to do.
Don't tell me what to do. Again, it just shows right in us there's this rebellion. Yeah. But what is now glorious is, despite our rebellion, God chose to draw near. Even though we were drawing far away. Yeah. He drew near. And that's why the gospel message, man, it's a glorious message.
Well, to me, it's powerful, and it's trying. Like, I often question myself now as like, what changed for me? Like, the Sermon on the Mount is a very powerful thing. I struggle daily with you can't serve two masters.
Yeah,
and I see it like I can't go outside to see because it's like the other way, right? And it's like it's almost inherent and very deep within us. So I'm constantly questioning it. In fact, and this is one of the things that I think is interesting because I still want to go back to your son and this issue.
My book.
But my question that I have, and it came up in Acts 4, but this is a regular one that comes up with me. And I've got the idea that God created everything.
Yes.
And that I believe. Mm. So, if that's the case, where does my part fit in to my decision to choose a Pike place versus a cappuccino? Do you follow me? Like, yeah. Because it's like, and I've asked a number of this, and that's why it's so fascinating to have this chat with you, because it's like I'm science, I'm the engineer, like that your son, just things fit together for me. And one of the things, to me, science is actually demonstrating God.
Yes.
Not atheism. And how they got separated, I'm spending a lot of time studying that because it's kind of around Darwin's time, and science kind of came up with this thing to declare, unless it's of a material nature, we're not only not going to say yes or no to it, we're not even going to look at it, which is a stunning thing to me. Yet we have the atheist view kind of saying, well, I believe in science. Well, if you believe in science, then to me you're saying you believe in God. coming to that, it's like when you go to all that's been created, and if I go into things like the fundamental forces, like gravity, we had nothing to do with gravity. We don't even know what it is today. Where did that come from? Or if I go to a cell, like we just keep finding more and more, deeper and deeper. Like it's like
God knows the smallest soul.
It's infinite.
Yes.
It's infinite.
Yeah.
We didn't have any. Like today, despite AI and all the things we're hearing about artificial intelligence, we can't create the first element on the periodic table, a hydrogen. Like we can't create an atom.
No.
Like it's stunning to me in many, many ways. So then I come back to when God has created everything, where does the part come in for us to say, like, are we the only being that has the ability to say, I did it my way? I chose the red car over the blue car, or the matrix, the blue pill over the red pill type of thing. How does that fit in? Because I do saw, like, if you say everything, if God created everything, and that's repeated, like it's not just one spot.
Absolutely.
That means everything.
Right.
Like that includes like the unconscious, the spirit,
everything.
So when that comes to you, to me, this is where it becomes incredibly fascinating, not only from a faith standpoint, but from, I'll call it a mind intellectual part.
Yes.
Because Galatians 4:7 says the peace of God surpasses all understanding. So why more than ever do we want to pursue it? Yet we know we're never going to actually understand.
So I think, yes, God created everything. And of course, God also created human beings and gave the human beings the ability to choose, the free will. The question that we would have to look at when we're thinking free will is this free will libertarian? By that I mean, are you choosing in a way that there is no external force whatsoever that is informing your choice? A good example would be, this morning I got up, I made my coffee, I went to my room, and I basically opened my closet, and I decided this morning I'll wear this sweater, I'll wear this shirt, and I looked at the colors to make sure they match and all that. Now, the question is, why did I decide to match my outfit? The colors. Why did I choose to match them? What influenced my choice? Good. Yeah. What influenced me to even decide to get dressed this morning? I could have chosen not to get dressed. I'd have chosen not to brush my teeth. I'd have chosen to come here with bad breath. I'd have chosen to come here naked. I'd have chosen to walk here. So what made me choose the thing I chose? It wasn't libertarian where there was no external force. No, there was an external influence. Ezra, you can't walk naked because that is not going to be good. And Ezra, the clothes you're going to choose, you want them to coordinate and match. Why did I choose to make them match? Because it was an external force that informed my choice, even though it was free, but it was not libertarianly free. There. So now when you come to God creating man, yes, he created man with the ability to choose, but that choice will be informed by an external force that's not in him. Because he does not have the ability to choose. Now, some people even go as far as saying, some theologians, they go as far as saying, God himself and his will is not libertarian either. Why? It is informed by his character. He's merciful. He's loving. So now that is what will make him choose to do what he does. Because if he was libertarian in his will, we would be destroyed. But his love is what moves him to choose to move and to be compassionate and to be kind and to be gracious. So, yes, we've been created with a free will, but there's an external force that has chosen. That's why the book of Romans will say, all creation declares, it speaks to God. Everything about him is there. So in other words, Now you can choose to, you have no excuse to say, oh, I don't believe in God. Look at creation. Because your will is not libertarian. It's compatibilist. In other words, there's an external force that will now inform the thing you choose. Now, you will I worship God? Or will this external force, things that not God, that now make me choose the other? So Satan comes to Eve and says, hey, the fruit is wonderful. So there's an external thing that comes and now it informs her. Now she makes a choice and Adam makes the choice, but it's something external that came. So your will is there, but it's not libertarian.
I like that definition. I like how you phrase that.
It's not libertarian at all.
No.
So when God creates, then He gives it the ability to choose these external forces that will make it choose, and He will desire that He will choose to obey Him. But then He also recognizes all these other external forces that are not godly.
Right.
But then the problem is now man likes this thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Rather than this thing here.
Well, to me, it's the C.S. Lewis thing that if you want to be fulfilled, you just can't be through them. Because having gone my own experience, right? That new car, the smell, everything, becomes the old car. Not in 2 years, but like very quickly.
Very quickly.
Surprisingly, you get so used to it. And I think it's been so well demonstrated by what we're even recording on today with an iPhone. Like a number of years ago, like you have to have the latest iPhone.
Yeah.
And like
the newest greatest.
We don't even use close to what the power of those iPhones are. Like, but you like it's that thing, and you suddenly, when the market world begins to understand that, well, we got to keep delivering Ezra his new stuff every 2 months, right?
Exactly.
Or Doug, and it's like. But when you start to become aware of that, to me,
yes,
it disappears. Like how you described wanting to be a pilot,
yes,
and then it just disappeared. It's like it's a bit of a different thing, but in the same sense, it's just like you wonder what's there. And that's to me when you mentioned Joshua. We're studying the book of Joshua right now. It's stunning what is in that book, right? And like what you can go through. And this is a Bible study that Northview puts on. So if you're interested at all in knowing more about this, the activities, the programs at Northview are second to none. They're like going to Bible college if you have me. Not that I've been. So back now, because I want to come back to your son.
Yeah.
Because this is a huge. This is kind of a huge, in a way, dilemma. Because I think there are some forces that are at work here that we're not necessarily completely understanding. And this is why Justin Brierley's book is very interesting. I mean, we've got a new book from Peterson that's out. We have the Bible, of course.
Yes.
And you have like a lot of, like we're very fortunate to even have Apologetics Canada here and the close connection. And because of the whole sense of, if you are that science-driven person, that's it. If you look deep enough, it's only going to take you here. It's only going to take you to God. Like every rabbit hole I go down, it just keeps coming back to. The other thing that I think, and you spoke again at this on Saturday too. You had a lot in that. It seems something in our society. It's very much a struggle to think that you can't do this alone. Like it's like in our system, our society. I call it even. I use the word epigenetics, but we're independent. We became independent from our mother country,
right?
And it's so deep inside us that we'll be independent and be lonely, just because we did it. So we think, So
I want to do it on my own.
We did it alone. And what's become very aware, I've become very aware since even the pandemic part of it, and that's why I think the church is so important here, is that community, that connection, this podcast, what we do here, this connection to me. Why I'm so glad to be doing it in person finally, because there's something that goes on here that we don't understand.
No.
But we can't live without it. Like
No.
we think we can. We think the technology is telling us we can sit here on our email and do whatever we want to do by ourselves. But we start to lose something. And the pandemic kind of demonstrated that to me in a very big way. And this is why I think it's so important to start to recognize it's not a weakness to say you can't do this alone.
Yeah. But the unfortunate thing is the cultural narrative will tell you this. And so, for example, is it a Home Depot's tagline? You can do it. We can help, but you can do it.
Yes.
Nike, just do it. And it's not speaking to a group. It's speaking to an individual. So you will see it's an individual athlete who is practicing and running and doing whatever. So it's all it's an individual. Now you go back to the creation story in Adam and Eve. What does the serpent say to Eve? Oh, you will be. So there's this individualism, this self-actualization that we are being thrusted into, and then we think, oh, I can be like God. I can do this. I can do that. And so for me to feel successful, I would have to do it. And then you meet the gospel of Jesus Christ. And what is interesting about the gospel of Jesus Christ is even the faith to have in God has to be given to you. So faith to have in God, faith to trust God, faith to follow God, strength to do it. So in other words, my salvation and yours is 100% dependent on God. I cannot love God in and of myself. God has to give me that love.
I like that. That's very good.
To love Him. Yes. God has to give me the faith to have in Him, because Ezra is not that awesome. I may be a good guy, but I'm not that awesome. I suck on so many levels. But God Himself is the one who provides the A to the Z. This is the reason why the gospel of Jesus Christ is way more robust than any other worldview. Amen. Why? Because it shows human beings, you are incapable of meeting God's standard. So God comes and says, you know what? I will give you everything you need to meet my standard. So that at the end of the day, you will never puff your chest and say it was you. No, it was me who brought you here. And therefore we can say, glory and honor be to you, Lord. For you're the one, you started it, you carried me, and you finished.
Yeah.
All Him, nothing Ezra. The love I need to have, Lord will give me. The faith I need to have, He will give me. The faithfulness, the tenacity, He'll have to give. So when you read, when Paul says, the grace of our Lord be with you, sometimes we limit, there's a reductionist view or a reductionist thought when it comes to grace. But grace is a power. It is the grace is like the vehicle that will carry you to the destination, to where you go. So when you say, hey, may the grace of God be with you, in other words, may the power of God, Doug, be upon you to obey God in the circumstance you may find yourself in.
Yeah.
So it's God all the way.
It is, yeah.
It's not us. But the challenge with us as human beings is, I want to be the one to do it. I want to build, I was self-made. There's no such thing as self-made. You didn't choose the family you were born in.
Absolutely.
You didn't choose the circumstances. You could have been born in Sudan.
No, it's and by the way, those listening, I did not prompt Ezra to say that. I repeat this many times because, like, I'm always blown away. Like the fact that we kind of forget that we had nothing to do with coming into this world. Like that's profound. Like so, it's a big, big thing.
LeBron James is the richest basketball player on the planet, and he is great. You see him play fantastic. He's 6'7" or whatever, and he's now Nike signed a contract with him, $1 billion contract for life. So this man is great, and he can walk around, and he's great. Yeah, and he does some good things. LeBron did not create the gene that made him 6'7".
Crazy. It's crazy.
LeBron could have been born in northern Kenya to the Turkana people and be short, 5 foot whatever, and be hungry and starving, and he be one of these kids you see on your World Vision commercials. He could have been that. So those kids who are on World Vision, did they choose that? No.
It's amazing to me, Ezra, when you say that, because we do this over and over and over again. And it's like, So success, whatever success is, right? But when we kind of feel it, we did it.
Of course. I feel like I.
But when things aren't going quite the way I thought they would go,
It's God's fault.
or I'm now reaching out. Please just do something, right? And you hear this, like when things are completely out of people's control, people that don't even profess to be religious, they're still praying.
Yeah. I pray that it goes well.
Like I think when you're stuck out in the middle of the ocean, you can't see water, nothing. You're thinking, you're praying to something bigger than yourself. You have to be. Lost in the forest.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we have that. Now when we come back and, I'm doing good.
We forget.
It's me.
We forget. I mean, even
it's weird.
When you look at all these heroes of the faith in the scriptures, God does tremendous things in and through them. A few chapters later, you notice, why are they doing this? But sometimes we think, oh, I was reading chapter 12, I'm now in chapter 16, and this person is totally off their rocker. So we think chapter 12, chapter 16 was just a few days. No, that could have been 2 decades. A 2-decade gap between chapter 12 and chapter 16. And this person has forgotten, that person is a human being like you and I. Just think about the many ways in which God has blessed us. So you answer a prayer today, you'll be all pumped and excited. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later, you totally forgot what God did. And that just shows how finite we are. And when the scriptures call you sheep, call me sheep. Sheep are they're the dumbest animal. You will take it from here to the everyday, from here to there, to the water, and then come back. One day you decide, let's see if they'll make it. Nope. They will wander, they will sit there, they'll be lost. You take them to the water, and then you say, okay, let's see if they'll make their way back. Oh no, they're going to sit there, others are going to meander. When the scriptures call you sheep, there's a reason why they call you sheep. But then the scriptures are also very interesting because they also call Christ shepherd now in the first century. A shepherd, so let's say you have your sheep, I have mine. There's a way in which you whistle and a way in which when you're walking your staff, you tap it on the rocks. You will have your rhythm of whistling and your rhythm of tapping, as will I. So when 2 shepherds come and their sheep mix at the watering hole, that's fine. But when it's time to go, each shepherd will be whistling and tapping his staff on rocks, and all of a sudden you'll see the sheep.
Really? I didn't know this.
You will see the sheep now scattering, and each sheep will follow its shepherd because the sheep knows the sound of the whistle.
I never heard that before.
Sound. Yeah. So when David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd," that's what he's referring to.
Interesting.
He leads me to quiet water. He leads me. How is he leading me? Yeah, the shepherd is whistling and tapping his staff on rocks. It is fun. It is phenomenal. So these are first century images or biblical images that shepherds understood. So the biblical authors will use images that people understand. So when God is your shepherd, that's what he means.
It's a powerful statement.
Yes.
Yeah, very powerful statement.
Your sheep belonging to his flock. How? Yeah, you will mingle with but you belong to his flock. When he says come, he's tapping and he's whistling and he's walking, and all of a sudden they begin to follow.
I've not heard that before. I've heard when Christ rides in on the donkey. I've heard the statement that, like, it's said they make things like valleys. What kind of king rides in on a donkey, as an example? And it was brought out that he doesn't ride in on a horse because a horse is like battle. It goes where the action is.
Yes, it's a fight.
Donkey is caring for its passenger. I'd never heard that before. Yeah. I thought that now this sheep one that you just said is going to stick in my head the same way.
Right.
Like it's weird that we don't know those things, but they're not really part of our world today.
So think of it this way. In our world today, for those who know Jesus, when the Word of God is opened and you hear a solid sermon, your heart is stirred.
Oh, yeah.
Your heart is stirred and you feel drawn to, you know what, I really need to turn off. I should not be watching this show anymore.
Yes.
I shouldn't be spending my money this way anymore. I should really pick up the phone and call that neighbor because... So you're starting to... What are you doing? You're now hearing your shepherd's whistle. You're hearing your shepherd tapping his staff to say, hey, Doug, hey, Ezra, it's time to go now. Can you walk away from that pool that you're in? You've been wallowing in mud. It's time to come home now.
No.
Yeah, so it is that. So when you hear your shepherds, you come.
Yes.
That's what sheep do.
Interesting.
This is who we are. Now, there'll be people who will also hear the same message and be like, forget it.
That at all.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Because they are sheep that don't belong to this shepherd. They're going to hear their shepherd calling the other guy. Who's going to say...
I really like when I hear about the message because, there's always like people you listen to that you like better than others and things like that. And the church is not away from that.
Yes.
And I remember hearing this from your protege.
Yeah.
And he said, try to remember that what is God telling you through the pastor you're listening to? Not what you think the pastor's trying to tell you.
Yes.
That completely changed how I looked at things. It was amazing. So we haven't got back to your son yet, but I want to go back because I'm so this intern program that Northview runs. Like this is one of the things that is so we have a new pastor, Eric Heath, who's been on the podcast a few episodes ago as well. Fascinating story if you want to hear one because he was a lawyer.
He was.
Which is kind of a stunning transformation, kind of like Paul in a way. And so he came out of this intern program, right?
Yeah.
So likewise at East Abbotsford, a new pastor's there, Levi, Friesen, who's come from the intern program.
Yeah.
So this is great for Northview. What do you think's going to come about from your working with, like in your Huntsville conference and starting to kind of stretch this? Because I'm sure you're getting people saying, well, you're not of the same denomination as we are. We're going to solve it our way because everybody has that. You're going to have people very like, we have an issue here we need to solve. And this is like no other. And then now you're dealing with it on a personal basis with your son. And it's like...
Yeah, I think to answer the question, let me start with my son and then we'll go to the spoken thing. So with my son, I think the thing that myself and other parents like us, with kids who we are seeing God doing remarkable things, we need to allow God to be God in their lives. Because in some way, I want control. I'm thinking, if my son can become an engineer, I look at the house prices in Abbotsford, in the Fraser Valley. A regular, just nothing spectacular house is $1 million in Abbotsford right now.
Unbelievable.
Yes. A townhouse is $900,000. So, how will he afford if he just becomes a teacher? Or if he's just a carpenter. He has to have a serious career or get into business and really the right business, the right niche, in order to even afford a mortgage of a house. So I want control, and I think, happiness and success for my child would be if he ends up as an engineer, rather than trusting the Lord to say, you know what, the Lord is the one who will provide the joy and happiness for this person. Secondly, we have to allow God to fulfill his call or to accomplish the calling he has on my son. Because my assumption is, again, like every dad, if I have a daughter, I want to walk her down the aisle. And I want my son to do this. And they'll be happy and we'll have grandkids and have this image. But I'm not allowing the Spirit of God to do whatever he will choose. Now, what if my son is called to go to a country where the gospel is a closed country and I may never see him again on this side of eternity? Am I open to that?
Because you're a father.
I'm a father.
As well.
Yes, I know. But then, God was father, and what did he allow his son to do? See, if Christ, if God the Father, if God the Father said, I love Jesus so much, I don't want him to die, what would have happened to the human race?
Well,
would we be sitting here?
No.
No. Salvation would not be a thing. So, therefore, the question here is, what is God's plan and purpose for Caleb, my son? God has a plan and purpose for his life. And I have to now trust God that he will accomplish his purposes, which I believe they're good. I may not necessarily understand them, but ultimately his plans are good, even though they don't make sense, even though they seem like, oh, this plan is now going down the drain here from my perspective, but I don't see the big picture. So the issue is a trust.
Yes.
Will I trust God with my son in his future? That's the question.
It's so interesting when you say that, because when my daughter approached me to say she's coming out west to go to Bible college, like that didn't go over real well with Dad. Because there's lots of Bible colleges in Ontario.
Yeah.
Don't want to miss my girl. But when I realized kind of, I think, even what you're doing, and it wasn't from like a God-based thinking, I didn't think. I now think it was. I had to get out of the way. That was the part that was the struggle for me. Was you need to get out of the way. You're not going to change. Like you and Laura have done what you can. You're always going to support them, I hope. But it was like, I have to get out of the way.
I gotta. You have to get out of the way.
So now you see what you made me recognize is I think another power was
so God.
Interesting.
So it's all about me as father trusting God. So with regards to my son. Now you come to the Muskoka piece. And even tying in a little bit to your daughter's story about going to camp, and that was just an amazing transformation thing for her. The question that I'd ask, and the question that I mull through is, a lot of kids who go to camp and they come out and they have this fire for the Lord. What was it about camp that really ignited passions in these children? And the answer to that question, the adults and the counselors who are there play with the kids. And then it's in that context of fun and excitement and play and intentional relationship building that now the counselor begins to speak truth. And this young person gets to hear the gospel, male or female. And they are drawn to God, and there's a deeper connection. And the counselor now becomes a mentor, a role model. Because you're there a week. So the mentor is always there. So I wake up, they're there, go to bed, they're there, and they're on the field, and we're playing. So then the question becomes, are we as adults spending time playing and hanging out with these kids? Or do we see some of the things they do, video games? I hate video games, but think of it this way. So right now, I hang out with some boys, 18 to 30-year-old boys, about 25 or 30 of them, on Monday nights. And they play this thing called Clash of Clans. Do I care about Clash of Clans? Not really. But I'm in the Clash of Clans game with them, and we have fun. Do I know what I'm doing? Kinda, but not really. But the idea here is, the more I play with them, the more I get into their world, the more I come down to their level. Now I can have deep conversations. They will look up to me because of who I am, but I have deep conversation. And when I look at a young man and I say, you know what, I see a missionary in you. I see a pastor in you. I see a business person who's going to be committed to the local church. There's one young man I told, he's in business and all that, passionate, wondering about I'm in business, but how do I square business with ministry? And then I told him, why don't you go and make as much money as you can, and you pray that God would make you make billions, but you take the billions and you now choose to fund missions. Choose a country in the world where the gospel is not there. And you say, my business will fund the gospel proclamation there. You should have seen the passion, that the fire. Because he saw, so I can do business and make a lot of money, but now there's purpose. See, I've lived long enough, so now I can instill purpose. And this young man is looking up to me. Now I can speak into his life, but I can only speak into it because I played with him. I had fun. We went Clash of Clans.
You have a connection.
I have a connection.
So big connection.
So with your daughter at camp, that's the connection that she saw. And someone was there to listen. And someone was there to put up with the childish jokes and the giggling and all that. Someone was there. But I think for us as adults, when this get, Keep quiet. Take your racket outside. Go and do something else. Leave me alone.
We got stuff to do.
We got stuff to do. I got hockey to watch. I got business to do. I have no time to listen to your racket. So they're never going to come.
No.
They go to camp. That's where they find it. So coming back to Huntsville in Muskoka and the conversation there, at the end of the day, this pipeline crisis will be solved if we who are now adults, the fathers of the faith right now, choose to roll up our sleeves and play games and hang out and put up with things that we may consider childish and a waste of time. Oh no. It is in those moments where you hear their hearts, but then you also are able to speak. And you speak truth in powerful ways. And all of a sudden, this young man will say, you know what? Ezra said I could do it. Yeah, maybe I can. Ezra saw something in me. Maybe I can see something in me.
There's something in the human psyche, to me, that recognizes truth.
Of course.
That is very,
of course.
And often, I think what's happening is they're finding out that we're finding out that the truth that we thought we learned is false or a lie. And I think it's becoming overwhelming in often. So when you say that, like, that's the time. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're 50 or you're 22 or you're 14.
No.
A truth is a truth.
It's the image of God in you.
Yes.
When God creates us in his image and likeness, when you hear his truth, it will resonate. It will always resonate. It's the image of God in you. You know, when you hear truth, you will know it's true. And when you hear something that is not true, but it's kind of fun, you will want it because it's fun. You'll want it because... But deep down, you know...
No.
This train is not going to... But I like the candy in it, but it's not going to take me where I need to go.
No, that is so true. It's part of the reason, I think, where Paul has become so, I'll say, revealing to me, but also, like, he wrote half the New Testament. And having that Damascus and saying, like, he had a lot to say from, he was a scholar of the Old Testament, like no other, right?
Yes.
And he had to have something that we need to pay attention to.
You bet.
I'll say me in particular in this case, and what we're finding out. And I think it's stunning to me. I know we're in the time zone, so what have we not said that you'd like to say? Because I was going to say, you are looking for pastors.
Yes.
Actively, I think, in that area here, right?
Yes. So I will say we are looking for pastors. Now, you might be there thinking, but I'm not a pastor, I'm not trained, I don't have theological education. We can fix the training. We can fix the training. That we can fix. But the thing is, there are people out there who God has called. There's a calling that you feel like, I think I can be, I think I feel that I need to be a pastor. I think I can plant a church. I can pastor, I can be on mission. But you have no idea
what to do.
Yeah. So most people, if I don't know what to do, then I just sit there and I do the other because I don't know. There's no way.
Yeah.
But the call was there. If that's you, I would love to have a conversation. I'd love to have a conversation because we can create a pathway. And it doesn't matter where you are in life, the level of education. It doesn't matter. If the call of God is there, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter your level of education. It doesn't matter what you know or what you don't know. When God calls, oh my goodness, he will equip, he will qualify, he will give you something that will enable you to do what he's called you to do. And that something is his spirit. When you think about the disciples of Jesus, every single one, these were losers. These guys were bozos. They were losers. Every single one of them. And yet, this is the team that Christ chose to ride with to transform the world.
Oh man, you couldn't have said that to me better. Because one of the things I think is a real struggle for me in interpreting is what the disciples gave up. And I think I'll say that Dallas Jenkins' The Chosen, even though there's a lot of fictional account in it, what they're demonstrating in what those disciples had to give up, even if it's fictional, gives us a chance to at least better understand. Like in today's world, I think it's almost impossible to understand that what they give up. And to your point, that missionary that your grandfather saw,
Yes,
what, like you said, like what did he give up to come there? Not to mention like family or his own, like the danger, the life. How did he go to get and oversee that? Like, because the adventure gets you going. That's like how they talk about World War II people coming in. Oh, we're all excited to sign up until they're in it. And talk about horrifying. Anyway, Ezra. Oh, go.
One more thing. So think about this. So you might be listening, the listener, you might be listening and thinking, okay, yeah, what they would have given up. But what inspired this person to give up whatever they gave up?
Oh, yes.
What inspired? Yeah. And the point here is this. Think of it this way. If I came to you and I said, by Christmas of 2026, not 2025, but 2026, so 2 years from now, Christmas, I will give you $100 million. By Christmas 2026.
Yes, yep.
$100 million. But you need to be homeless today. You need to give up your home, give up your whatever, struggle, live on the streets, sleep under the bridge for 2 years. But then Christmas 2026, guarantee $100 million. Would you do it? See, now when you know what's coming, what's in the end, your suffering means nothing because you know. So, in other words, you will give up whatever you need to give up to gain. It's the same idea. Most people who want to be successful football players, professional sports, or professional actors, movie, whatever, they can see what the end is. They will pay the doctors, surgeons, doing residency, or lawyers studying. The price they have to pay to become a lawyer, or they will give up their lives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because they know what the goal is. So from a Christian perspective, the thing that makes you give up whatever you give up is if you truly know what is at the end. So I think maybe for the listener, invest some time this year to study and understand the hope of the Christian faith. When you understand that hope,
changes you.
Oh, you'll give up whatever. There's nothing that you will not give up.
Your soccer story.
You know?
It's beautiful. So I shouldn't leave you with that, but we do need to go here. But if you want to hear this soccer story that Ezra put into his message to give you an idea of when you know, it changes how you look at things. Go to Northview. You can see his message. It was recorded there. With that, we have to go quick here. I thank you very much for listening to this first episode. That is, I can't say it's live. It's in person. But I was going to say, I hope you'll tune in to many more. And thank you, Ezra. Thank you so much for having me. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It didn't disappoint me. Anyway, thank you very much for joining. And until next time, this is Better Than Not. Bye for now.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.